I mean, what
If
do you
you're
think about
saying
this
nature
hysteria?
tends to simplify or generate certain patterns of behavior. Nature does generate certain patterns of behavior. The ability to extract that which is significant and less significant is not common. And that's where science and semantics comes in. It gives you more of an ability to extract from nature that which is significant.
Yes.
And that's what is lacking in the world. The ability to select. The brain doesn't have that, only experience. If you touch a certain plant, your fingers itch for 3 days, you memorize the pattern of that plant because you have a reason to. And you say to other people, stay away from that plant. Where do you get it? You got burned by it. Now, some people might say, I wonder if that plant's good for anything, and they might try different things with it. And after a year's study, they can't find anything. But somebody else finds out that that plant that itches kills the malaria mosquito. That's later.
Was it Bucky Fuller who said pollution is just something that people haven't worked out what it's useful for yet? I think it was Bucky Fuller who...
Well, I think I know how he means that.
Yeah.
And I would ask him if he worked it out. And if he said no, then I said, why do you bring it up? Do you know what I mean? A guy says, there's too much noise in this city. Do you have a noise abatement system? I said, no. Are you working on it? No. Then I'm not interested. Is that? A noise abatement is some method of eliminating noise. And I think otherwise they're just complaining. It's too bad there's so many airplane crashes this year. What do you suggest? I don't know, then shut up. Is that clear?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes, everybody's really interested in what I'm talking about. They understand it. I don't say anything to hurt people. I say things to make them aware of how little they contribute. And the question is, if people came from another world, say they worked out lots of technology, but they can fly through light years of time, you know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't think I'd talk to them. I think I might say, what do you think I ought to know? Tell me what I ought to know. I would not say, well, you made a long trip. That's very good. You guys must be very advanced. I'm not saying anything they can use. If I say, what do you think I ought to know? They say, your brain is too small to harbor that. Thank you, I would say. You know. So people don't know what is significant. If they meet Einstein, they'd say, gee, can I have your autograph? But they wouldn't say, what do you think I ought to know to help me think as well as you?
But if you met yourself in the future,
What?
if you met yourself in the future, if I met myself in the future and that person was 50 years older than me, I'd ask them, what do I need to know so that I can...
I know that I wasted a lot of time to get to the future. So I try to give kids information without waiting for them to bang their head against all the obstacles. I write a book saying how to move in the future with less pain.
That's a good book.
I haven't even written it yet, because it wouldn't sell unless you're very well known. You got to remember that if you develop tools before the new engine is made, no one will buy those tools unless they fit the new engine. So people make conventional tools, mostly, not all people. Those that don't are called inventors. And then even if the inventor made a new vacuum cleaner, he still has to show it to people. And the guy says, gee, that's a great vacuum cleaner. How much is it? That's the next. $5,000. Well, I'd rather buy a vacuum cleaner for $40. Because they're talking about their range. But if you have $100 million, So you say, I'll take 2. What determines what you say? Your position
Yes.
and the money you have.
Yes.
So I would say, if I had to use language, all behavior is forced by background.
Yes.
When you get thirsty, you drink.
Yes.
That's forced by thirst. When you get hungry, you go to a restaurant. That's forced by hunger. But the higher the level of hunger, the more sniffing food you'll be doing. You know what I mean? What you pay attention to has to do with your needs. If you hadn't eaten for 3 days, you will smell food faster than Roxanne. She just had a big meal.
Similarly, if you had a certain experience, like you grew up in an orphanage, you would possibly have certain things in your characteristics that would, when you bring up your kids, you would try to not have them go through the same thing.
No, I would experiment with the kids,
Okay.
see what I can do. But I don't know that it's better until they react. I'll try to reach them. If they don't react, I'll try different systems. And when I find the one that works, and I meet new kids, they may not react to the system that worked on the other kids.
How important is it for groups of people to, in your mind, to think completely differently to the other one? Because I mean, it's quite important for everybody to think differently.
I don't think it is.
Don't you think so?
No, correctly, not differently.
Because
appropriately. Do you know what that means? Thinking appropriately.
yes.
If you live on this world and you can tell me all about another planet, I'm not interested. It is not appropriate. It's not appropriate for you to tell me there are particles beyond the electron if I don't have any need for that. I don't hear it. Do you know what I mean?
think I know what you mean. A
What
lot
is
of
appropriate?
information is
How we relate to the earth and one
Yes.
another.
Now, to me, that's intelligence.
And
It's
maintain.
working out what is relevant and what's not relevant.
Yes, that's what we have to do. What is relevant to human beings at this time? Not 100 years from now, that would be different. What is relevant? In other words, if you go to another world, you want a guy to tell you what you can't eat, what's poisonous. First, those are important things. And if there's no oxygen, he says, or very little, he says you'll only live 3 months unless you blow down. Get out of here. That's the information you want. People don't know what they want. They can't. There was some scientist that wrote a book called Don't Ask People What They Want, Tell Them What They Ought to Want. The Indian says he wants the blessing of the High Father that has ascended into heaven. That's not deliverable. The things he asks for are irrelevant. What the Indian wants, he doesn't know, to maintain the best of health and the widest, better understanding of the world around him. So when you say some people are scientists, some are not, they don't know what they're talking about. Everybody is scientific and they use the best tools they have.
Yes.
But that they may not be adequate. That's a problem. So people say, I like intelligent people. And you say, well, who's intelligent? My uncle, he made $40,000 this month. Well, his standards of what is intelligent is different than yours.
Yes.
You understand? The word intelligent could mean different things in different contexts. So that's why our language is so terrible. It doesn't have common meaning.
Just close that. Because I always thought reading as many books as possible was the right thing to do. And
I would
I read
say
lots of junk, lots of
not as many as possible. As many are relevant to your background that you can understand.
Yes.
You can pick up a book on celestial mechanics, certain forms of mathematics,
And I have.
which you can't understand or
Yes.
can. But if you don't use it in your life, it would be superfluous to your needs. If she could name every island in the South Pacific, it's not superfluous to her needs. I'd rather she named the food she needed to maintain good vision and health. There is lots of information out there, but a lot of it is superfluous to your need. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
I know a person that can name every crater on the moon.
Yes.
To me, that's superfluous, unless he's planning a journey to the moon.
Yes, you're right.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay.
Yes. Well, when I was younger, I memorised all the Latin names of all the fish because I used to go deep sea fishing with my dad.
Sure.
And it wasn't very.
I understand.
It's not very useful to me now. Yes, no, you're right. I'm going to just change it to but is there anything that you wanna cover? Or?
Those are very important points. Studying things superfluous to your need.
Yes.
Now, if you become too advanced, you may have minimum contact with normal people. You will lose your contact because they wouldn't be interested in you or the things you talk about because they go past people.
Your idea of the city and how the resource-based economy and all these other
It isn't really a city, it really is a university for all people that live there. It doesn't end. It's continuous information. You don't get a PhD and walk out. You get continuous education, modification of viewpoints. You get all kinds of viewpoints. So you're updated all the time. You never get out of school and say, I guess the youngsters are learning new things. You're learning new things all the time. The university is a commercial institution, as far as I'm concerned. It has nothing to do with science. When you get out in the lab and go to work and get your hands on it, then it's real. But if you come up with ideas that are different than conventional ideas, if you're not a graduate of a university, you don't get the same hearing you get. So you're probably considered more or less non-institutional education. And that would be a criticism against the university lately. A person that graduates from university is not willing to take their hat off and say, hey, that's an interesting concept. Because they put a lot of effort in going to school. And if you come out with ideas that are different, it is not to their advantage to uphold you. Do you understand that? Okay.
I was having a chat with...
Well, that's the price you pay. I mean, if you want to go off on your own, you meet with additional conflict because the institution doesn't sanctify it. And that goes for business and electronics or whatever field you're in. Because in an economic system where there's money to be gained, it's not a question of trust. It's a question of survival. If a person is a graduate of a given institute and they were to yield, although some have, but if they were to yield, it's an attack on the institution. But I don't attack the institutions. I describe what I feel is incorrect. I don't attack them. I feel certain things are not as useful, such as the purpose of things in life. I think that comes from religion, the influence of religion. I myself do not believe there's any purpose to anything in the body. I believe you're born with differences, and if differences are useful, you survive. If they're not, you don't survive. It has nothing to do with purpose. I don't think the purpose of the eyes are to see. I think you have eyes and you see if there's light. But if there's no light, you have eyes and you don't see.
Yes.
But they say the purpose of teeth are to chew food. You have teeth and you chew food. Organisms without teeth tend to digest their food. Mosquitoes don't have teeth, but they can dissolve when they inject a substance into you that's a non-coagulant, and then they siphon up the digestive stuff. They inject a digester in here. So you could say, what's the purpose of mosquitoes? What's the purpose of no teeth? They don't need them. And the whales, for example, do not have anything you can really call teeth. They have all kinds of organisms without teeth. But they always say that's the purpose of it. And I indicate that if children were born with a ball of fat under the elbow, they say that, well, that's to reduce injury when they fall, then you'll notice in time it's absorbed when they learn to walk. They project their own purpose. I would say the purpose of bones is to be broken. The purpose of sneezing and coughing is to infect other people. If you want to add purpose to things, I think malaria is infectious. And the purpose of the malaria mosquito is to get blood. In the process, you become infected. I don't believe the purpose of malaria is to keep the population down. I don't believe nature sits back with any purpose. It just goes. And if you don't understand that, when a hurricane comes to a church, it doesn't go around it or above it and down. It blows it away too. Now you can say, if you want to, the purpose of hurricanes are to blow buildings apart. The purpose of earthquakes is to keep the population down in number. You know, if that were true, earthquakes would occur when beaches were crowded with people, and then a tsunami would come. It was to control population, but tsunami can come anytime.
Why do you think humans have this continuous ability to keep going down to things being either or, you know, good, bad, right, wrong? How can we get out of this conditioning, of this perpetuating of it being the ultimate good and
Well,
the
you
ultimate
can make
bad?
films, you can make motion pictures, and you can show different points of view. Those that are disposed toward this type of view will, and those that are not will not. For example, most people are brought up with romantic notions. And if you say man is nothing but a biochemical machine, it's very offensive. It isn't pleasant at all.
Yes.
I'd rather think that I make my own decisions, that I have free will, and I can make my own choices. Of course, I feel that way. I feel like I'm making my own choices, but I also know that it's within the realm of my background. I can never ask for some unit that doesn't exist,
Yes.
and neither can anyone else. I've never heard an Indian ask for an automatic rifle. Might like a better bow and arrow. I never heard of an Eskimo saying, I'd like to have geothermal energy to heat my igloo. It's outside of his frame of reference. So when I say man has no choice, I mean the choices and the options are within the frame of reference that the organism grows up in. In King Arthur's time, you might want a horse-drawn chariot. You don't ask for a Mercedes, it's just, or a twin-engine Beechcraft. You can't. So when I say man has no choice, I mean with the choice is always within what you learned. If you live near a river and everybody clubs a fish rather than a fish hook, that would be your choice, to get a good club and hit the fish with it.
But surely there's...
And if that's true, where does innovation come from? If everybody has no choice. They see or encounter a new situation, and if they have a need for what they're seeing, they lock on. If they don't have a need for it, they don't. For instance, if you break a matchstick and put a drop of water at the broken junction, the matchstick moves. If you're interested in dynamics of movement, you'll study it, otherwise you and move on. You don't make something of most of the things you see, because your brain is regulated to a certain type of evaluation, and you don't make those associations. Now, if an Eskimo happened to build a square igloo, which is almost impossible, and it didn't cave in, he would use that. And it would cave in, the Eskimo priest or witch doctor would say that you caved in because you didn't follow the Eskimo tradition. You know, people always invent stories. They have to comfort themselves. They account for things. The reason for fruit trees is to supply food for people. The fruit trees will grow food whether there's people around or not. If every man on earth killed every other man, fruit would still grow on trees. You understand?
Do you think we can teach ourselves out of this?
Yes, we can.
Could you?
But you can't get hold of people. They go to school because they want a profession and make a living. Science is a procedural system, and scientists tend to use a procedural system. They seem to come up with closer approximations of reality. Non-scientific systems project their own values. Scientists tend to use more accurate systems. But they're not free, because they're brought up in a given culture. Some scientists may be brought up in a Nazi culture, and the scientific method doesn't deal with that. That has to do with their family relationship to the land they live in, and they have certain feelings of loyalty, which are apart from their scientific training. So I would say that scientists, like everyone else, reflects their culture. They're not necessarily always scientific. They may be in their unique branch of research, but in human relations, I don't think they're capable of being scientific. And besides, if you're scientific in human relations, you'd have to be with a girl that understands what you're talking about. The probability is very low. If you're a behavioral scientist, for example, normal people think you can see through them, or you have a kind of a wit that's outside of them, and they feel they don't want to be looked at by an intelligent person because they don't feel good. They don't feel secure. So, besides, even if you were able to do that, you wouldn't do that because it would be offensive to that person to tell them that you can see their soul. You know what I mean? What good would that do? It's best to understand people and the way they react. Arabs tend to react to the bottom line. If they want something, they just see something that they want and they say, how much is it? And the guy goes to a story. It was made by 100 blind people, took him 20 years to make. The Arab just says, how much is it? He just knows, stays with the bottom line. And there are a lot of people that are salespeople that come off with all kinds of things that are irrelevant to where you want to go. Because if you go up to a bridge and the guy says the bridge is closed, your next question is, when does it open? If you want to get to the other side. He says, not this summer, next summer. Then you either go down and take a ferry across, or say, God damn that bridge patrolman, I don't like him at all. He's obeying orders. So, a lot of conversation between people is blah, 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 meaning very little signal. It's called high noise level in electronics. You know what that means? When we listen to voice, we don't want static. We just want to hear the voice. But some systems are broken down, they're not working well, so you get a lot of noise and crackle. Scientists say, what's the signal to noise ratio? If you say all the noise has been eliminated, the signal is smooth, just voice. That's what you want. You don't want noise. And when you turn a light on, you don't want heat, you just want light. But heat is a byproduct of the old type of lamps. The fluorescent lamp gives off less heat and more light. So when you think of what it is that you want. Yes, you want a dishwasher, but if there's no dishwashers, you get a slave to wash your dishes.
But
You understand?
don't you think the other is an important part? Like, for instance, the brain creates a lot of noise, and on top of that noise, people are able to identify the things that are of value. For instance, like with the Second World War, they found out that the instruments worked better when they were flying, when there was lots of noise and activity, as opposed to when they were on the ground. So humans create a lot of noise. For instance, it's hard to identify a mosquito against a black background, but if you put a white noise over there, so maybe there's a lot of noise that we need so that we can decide what is noise and what's important. Do you think that's kind of how the brain works?
I would say all things that deflect the direction of human behavior has to be varied, so that it allows man to operate at his best.
Yes.
So we do that when it rains. We go under a tree, or we carry an umbrella, because we don't like the patter of the rain. But if we control the weather, that would be what we really want. We don't want umbrellas. We really ultimately want to control things in the environment so that we can operate more effectively. Man really doesn't care about his fellow man unless his fellow man is extensional to him. You know what that means? If a person brings you food, another person brings you water, those people you're concerned with. But if another person just plays the violin and you're not around, he is of no significance to you. If a tree, if you got under it in the summer and it was much cooler due to the fact that it generates refrigeration, you would protect those trees for your gain. But in the North Pole, they would never sell those trees. No one gives a damn about them. In fact, they dislike them.